Hey all. All right, so this is going to be a brief overview introduction to the material in Module 1. The heavy lifting here is covered in those next 3 sets of narrated slides. 2 versions of each set, right? One is a YouTube video and one's a PowerPoint presentation. Same exact thing, just different formatting. So there's three chunks of material there for you guys to review for Module 1, Chapter 1. This is just to give you the broad overview before you get down to the nitty-gritty. All right, so what are we doing in Chapter 1 exactly? Module 1, we're talking about American government and politics in a racially divided world, taking that right from our book. We are going to be looking at what is government, what's the nature of a government, any government? What are the functions of any government? And then we'll get a bit more specific, right? Given that we are a constitutional democracy, although I know some would say we are a republic. That's what Dr. Benjamin Franklin said, right? Coming off the floor of the convention in Philadelphia, 1787. It is said, maybe apocryphally, maybe true, that a woman came up to him and said, "Dr. Franklin, what have you been doing all these months in that hall that's been kept quiet and on the down low with windows nailed shut," it is said. Because they did keep it secret. They did. The people knew they were meeting, but they didn't know how it was going. Right? Because the founders thought, if this leaks out along the way, people will get distorted views of things. It'll set off firestorms of protests, and the whole thing will fall apart. Right? We want to have sort of like an immaculate conception of the Constitution. We're going to work on it for a few months, keep it on the down low, and then bring it to we the people once it's done. It is said that she asked, "What have you been doing all these months?" And he said, what have you produced? And he's like, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Right? Because the Founding Fathers, it turns out, were super down on the very word democracy because of a sort of an historical conception of this term by earlier philosophers like Plato and Aristotle. There was a conflation between democracy and rule by the unruly mob. All right? So the Founding Fathers really considered democracy to be a bad word, an epithet, something you would use to insult somebody. "You damn Democrat!" So that's why they called it a republic. Because they equated democracy with rule by the mob with no limits, no boundaries. Straight up. Well, no one wants that. Right? No one wants that. So what we've evolved over time is a constitutional democracy governed by the rule of law. Right? Where we, the people, are ultimately sovereign through elected representatives with free and fair elections and elected representatives and an independent media. And so look, I know these days conservatives in particular will say, "We were never meant to be a democracy. We're a republic. Get it right." And I'm always like, well, I don't know. I think constitutional democracy is the exact same thing as a republic. So I don't think we differ in underlying conception. I think we only differ on the language. Now, plus, it's also true, I'll be blunt here. The Founding Fathers were uncomfortable with democracy to a very high degree. They were living in the late 18th century, and they were the elite. So, of course, they had a dim view of democracy. But over time, guess what? We've become dramatically more democratic. And I would argue that's a good thing, not something to shy away from or be ashamed of. We've gotten rid of slavery. I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize for that. That's a good thing. It's made us more democratic. Right? We now take the Bill of Rights seriously. We didn't used to. That's good for our democracy. We had a Bill of Rights, but it wasn't enforced very much. We've expanded the franchise over time. I think that's a good thing. Women are now guaranteed the right to vote. I think that's a good thing. Young people, 18 to 21, are guaranteed the right to vote. I think that's a good thing. Black people can vote now. I think that's a good thing, an unalloyed good. All right? So we have become a lot more democratic over time. We have evolved from our beginnings and evolved in a democratic direction, but I don't think it's something we should be ashamed of and say, oh my God, we've gotten away from the original principles of slavery and limited suffrage and discrimination against religious minorities and, kangaroo courts and public hangings. Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have. I celebrate that. So, quick note there. So we'll talk about that, what it means to be a constitutional democracy. And if you want to call it a republic, cool. But those are my views on that. And then we'll talk about what are some of the underlying principles of constitutional democracies. Things like the rule of law. Yeah, because when we say constitutional democracy, right, what we mean is ultimately ruled by the people through elected representatives with the rule of law, with a constitution, with a Bill of Rights, with checks and balances, with separation of powers, with federalism, all that good stuff. That's also called a republic. Same damn thing. All right? But I just think constitutional democracy is more descriptive and it's more analytically useful. But there you have it. We'll also talk about our tragic history of inegalitarianism. Okay. And we'll talk about slavery a little bit. We'll talk about the exclusion of women, the marginalization of women from our politics for so long. We'll talk about discrimination, systematic discrimination against Japanese Americans after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We'll talk about the mistreatment of Chinese immigrants after the completion of the building of the Trans-Pacific Railway through the Sierra Nevada mountain range. We'll talk about religious discrimination against minorities like Mormons, Jews, Catholics, historically, and to some extent today. Typically, right, a tradition of inequality based on gender, the LGBTQ community as well, something that we struggle with yet today. Gender, race, ethnicity, and religion. The big ones. All right. So, sneak preview. Let's go.